thrilled to be having a dear friend and colleague of mine, Amy Sullivan, on our podcast today. We do a lot of overlapping work in trauma. And I wanted to discuss a little bit about that, not just in how to recognize what trauma looks like, but maybe the different modalities of treatment that you offer, because a lot of them are really fascinating, and I'm not sure that a lot of folks have heard about the things that you guys do, which is so cool. So if you could just kind of take the floor and give us a little bit of information about you guys and what you do, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. So I'm Amy Sullivan. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor and supervisor, and I am the founder and lead steward of Rooted Compassion Counseling and Consulting. We specialize in helping those who have experienced trauma, and we do that from a nervous system neuroscience perspective. So we use some different modalities to help people recognize and process their trauma, including EMDR, which is pretty well known. But all of the work that we do comes from something called the polyvagal theory, which really is about how our autonomic nervous system, which is what puts us into flee, fight, and freeze when we sense physical danger. We all learned about that in like 4th grade. What we know now is that we move into patterns of flee, fight, and freeze when we emotionally don't feel safe. And so that's what we're helping people to recognize. What are the sensations and experiences that our body is telling us? And really, when I say body, I mean our nervous system is telling us that something doesn't feel comfortable, safe, cool with us. It's, something's off. And so we help people explore what's the nervous system saying to us and how do we want to respond to that. So an easy example of that is like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous because I'm doing this recording with Teresa, and am I going to say something stupid, and how's it going? So when we first started, I took a couple deep breaths. That's something that works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. And we're very aware of that. So we're always looking for what works for the person that we're working with. We do a lot of expressive arts. We do movement, drawing, writing, collaging. We're next to a big park. We do a lot of walk and talk therapy, which is really helpful for people. So a little bit of a different lens. And we try to put a lot of different pieces of trauma processing together to meet the needs of a variety of people.
Talk to me a little bit about how somatic therapy can be useful in folks who are having trouble, like, emoting and talking about their trauma in just regular talk therapy.
Yeah, so when we look at neuroscience, we understand that the limbic system, which is a part of the brain and nervous system, is really where our trauma and our emotions get stored. And many times we can suppress, or we try to suppress, that part of our brain with behaviors, with thoughts, with hardcore, this is my will, I'm going to do this. And the reality is, when we've experienced complex developmental trauma, repetitive stress, ongoing stress, we lose the ability to think through things, to manage things in a way that align with our values, and our biology or our body starts to take over. So we might be saying something in reaction to somebody that, when we look back 10 minutes later, we're like, that's not me. Why would I say that? And so it's this automatic response to an attempt to keep ourselves safe. So some people do that by getting loud and big and attempting to control a situation or make somebody see the situation their way. Sometimes we just feel a rush of anxiety. Sometimes it shows up as depression and we can't move out of that. And so what I think is incredibly helpful about the polyvagal theory is that it gives us the research and the biology that says our behavior under stress, and when we're feeling the need to protect ourselves, that isn't always coming from our thinking brain. Very often it's coming from the part of us that is in reaction to attempt to protect ourselves.
We talk a lot in psychotherapy about reacting versus responding. And reacting is automatic, very somatic, very primal, instinctual,
Yes.
and not necessarily involving the frontal lobes, which is our
Yes.
executive functioning, right?
Yep.
Responding is taking a breath, taking the time to sit with your feelings, and deciding with your frontal lobes in your full brain being active and not letting your amygdalas run the show.
Right.
Being able to think through, okay, I need to do this, this, and this, and how do I want to get there?
Right.
But yeah, it's very hard, especially with our folks who are sort of mired in chronic developmental trauma and or repeated relational trauma after that. What do you recommend if despite therapies, despite talking, despite working on the vagus nerve, people are still in a state of chronic fight or flight?
Well, we have a couple different options, right? So talking is one way, but talking involves the frontal cortex, right? That's where language lives in our brain. So to get to the trauma in the amygdala, in the limbic system, there has to be movement, creativity, writing, drawing. There has to be some other way of accessing that. So what I appreciate about our relationship is we have our methods of let's do something a little bit different. And when I say movement, I don't mean like we're going to get up and dance. It could be, if you're really depressed and kind of sitting like this, we might invite you to sit back and then just notice what's different when you adjust your posture, right? In partnership with you, we'll sometimes see people who were like, I think there's something else going on with the brain and maybe we should send them over to the Anderson Clinic for PRTMS. This person is really struggling with some depressions and different effects of PTSD, and ketamine might be a good fit. And so we'll send them over for that. So I too love the interaction between our practices, because there are times where you do your thing. I think you just texted me today and said, we took him this far, he needs you for the rest, sort of thing. And so our practices, I think, complement each other so well in that way.
Very much so. Very much so. I love, so when you were talking about the different types of somatic therapies, just getting your body involved in movement and being creative and just kind of getting out of your headspace a little bit, it very much reminded me of like pediatrics and like play therapy.
Yes.
And like if you sit down and interview a child, they're not going to say, well, I'm feeling very depressed today, Dr. Anderson. I mean, they're not going to, right? But if you get them to play with dolls or get them to play house or get them to play a game, things will come out naturally because they're not thinking about it. They're not in that fight or flight state. And I love that with what you guys do, because it's almost a way to naturally bypass the fight or flight defenses, right? And I think that's amazing and beautiful and incredible and not really offered a lot from what I see. I don't know a lot of folks that do what you guys do, which is why I send so many people your direction. But I love that you guys are doing that, and I love it. So how many therapists do you guys have in your group now?
We have 6. Well, we have 7. We're just bringing on an intern this fall. Yeah, so we have 2 administrative folks, 7 therapists, and ranging in ages, so as young as 6. I like to say 6 to 106. But if you're 107, I'll still see you, right? Yeah, I think it's really interesting. To me, what's vital about therapy is that there has to be an embodied sense of emotional safety. And what's tricky about that is if somebody's living in a flee or fight reaction and they've had to do that their whole life to survive the things they've lived through, it can be really scary to
Hard to
move
develop
in and
that trust and that rapport for
yeah,
sure. Hmm.
yeah, to trust the person you're working with, but to even trust the sense of safety in your own body. Because trauma oftentimes happens when we feel a sense of safety and we're betrayed. It's not
Absolutely.
always like that, but relational trauma for sure.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, what we do is based in neuroscience. We're looking at the hippocampus and the amygdala and the limbic system and the frontal cortex and the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system, all of that information. And we pair that with this art of how do we invite and extend the sense of felt safety to clients. And there's no roadmap for that. There are options, but there's no ABC black and white kind of way to do that, which I think a lot of therapy modalities can be like that. And so to me, that's the exciting part about what we do. Who is this human that's sitting in front of me? And what do they need from me? And what's their experience? And how can I help them understand safety in their body?
I love that. I love that because time and time again, research has shown that it matters far less the modality of therapy and far more the rapport that the patient has with the therapist.
100%.
And every single person that I've met in your team is a warm fuzzy, so that makes me love sending people your direction and knowing that they're going to be well taken care of, knowing that they're very likely going to find somebody who they can feel safe with and sharing some scary stuff with. I do want to ask you too, outside of trauma, what all do you guys have specialties in? I know there are different people. I know there's somebody for anger management. I know there's somebody for couples counseling and family therapy. What else do you offer?
Yeah, so we have a couple folks that work with kiddos. So nobody's trained in play therapy, but through EMDR, we're learning how to work with kids with EMDR, which brings in play therapy, which honestly, I'm of the feeling of like, why stop with kids? I can't
Exactly, for sure.
There have been times where I might be with an adult who just seems to be struggling to relax, and we'll play cards, or I'll say, do you like puzzles? Do you like bananagrams? And so it's that look of building that rapport, that we don't just sit and look at each other and expect the person to dump everything on the carpet for me to weed through, because that doesn't feel normal, right? That's not how we do our relationships in real life. So yes, EMDR. Anger management, we're actually developing a certification program in anger management so that it'll be very assigned, like this many sessions, these are the objectives, these are the skills we're looking to help you develop. And we see couples, and we do that. Everything we do comes through the nervous system perspective. So what does DBT look like when we're using our polyvagal nervous system perspective? What does Gottman look like? What does EFT look like, emotionally focused therapy? What do those things look like while we're bringing this through the lens of the nervous system?
Very cool. Very cool.
And a lot of people don't identify themselves as having had trauma, which is fine. We see people who have depression and anxiety and are going through life transitions, have bipolar disorder or borderline, schizoaffective disorder. We look at all that a little bit differently when we bring it into addictions, when we bring it in through the nervous system.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I love that you take sort of a holistic look at it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is so awesome. Well, I have loved chatting with you today. I love working with you. I love you as a friend, as a professional, as a colleague.
Yeah.
You're just amazing. I cannot say enough good things about Rooted Compassion. So I wanted to
at you, friend, by the way, back at you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to share with the folks who are interested in seeking out your services how they can contact you on the internet or by phone.
Sure. So our phone number is 513 485-2033. I had a little moment of fear right there where I almost forgot
That's
our
all good.
phone number.
Deep breath, right?
Right. Website is rootedcompassion.com. So it's ROOTED, rootedcompassion.com. And Maggie is our practice manager, and she gets back to everybody. She's amazing, and she'll help people. She can work with people to help figure out which of our therapists is a good fit for them. And we are very committed to, if somebody on our team isn't going to work for you, we're going to help you find somebody, because it's hard. It's hard to find therapists. Do they have openings? Do they call me back? So we're dedicated to your good mental health. If it's with our team, great. If it's not, we're going to help you there too.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And for those of you guys listening, we'll continue our podcast on Psych Waves, but if you have an interest in ketamine infusions, psychotherapy, medication management, or PRTMS, which is a personalized version of transcranial magnetic stimulation, don't hesitate to give us a call if you're in the Cincinnati area, 513-321-1753, or you can look us up online at www.andersonclinic.net. Thanks again, Amy. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.